Hello, I'm Enzo, and today I'll be playing TerraTech Legion. This is a relatively new game, about a month and a half old at the time of making this video, and I have to say, TerraTech Legion is one of my new favorite games. I've been a fan of TerraTech for well over 11, maybe even 12 years now. I originally got into TerraTech because of Sunday, of course. He's the reason I play a bunch of the games I do. And I just fell in love with the game in the first place. As a matter of fact, I have over 720 hours in it, which is insane. I never played much of TerraTech Worlds, only about 35 hours, but I would like to get back into that game since they've updated it a whole bunch. There was just nothing to do when it first came out. TerraTech Legion, on the other hand, is actually made by a separate studio as well as Payload Studios, and it is completely different from the original TerraTech. It still maintains, like, the, core of TerraTech. You are playing as a vehicle, you can build and expand your vehicle, it's pretty awesome. But instead of going around the world killing things and gathering resources, it's actually a roguelike. Well, it says bullet haven, but I prefer to call it like enemy hell, where there's just like thousands of enemies to deal with on the screen. And as you can see, getting right into the game, that's exactly what it is. And that's the easiest way to sum up the game right there. Now, I didn't know too much about how everything worked at the beginning, so my loadout and, well, playthrough in total is gonna suck pretty bad. But I will show you guys a clip of my best survival run later on. And I would say that's not even my best because I could do way better now that I've put even more time in. I've actually put like 50 hours into this game recently because I love it so much. Besides the roguelike aspect and very unique horde gameplay of this game, it's actually super neat. You can choose between 4 manufacturers to play. Of course, you're playing as like the Prospector characters, as you can see here, Jean, or Jean, it's a French name I'm guessing, whatever. This guy, corp, is actually my favorite, but let's start out with GSO. Now, I actually have a couple of clips for each of the characters, thankfully, but you'll notice something fascinating. The character you start out with, GSO, is my least favorite. This is really weird because in the original TerraTech game, like, GSO is one of the best corporations. They've got all sorts of very useful gear, especially early on, but in here, GSO is absolute garbage. Like, I hate playing GSO so much. Their stuff is just terrible in here. Their explosive cannons have, like, no accuracy. Yeah, most of their stuff just sucks in general. And the main reason I just don't like playing GSO in here is because the Prospector herself is garbage, I have to say. All of her skills revolve around, like, luck and getting better drops and more scrap, which is the experience you get from enemies, but that doesn't make up for her lack of survivability. And when I mean lack of survivability, I'm saying she is a glass cannon. Sure, you can get really good gear and do decent damage, but none of that matters if you get two-shot by everything. So that is why I hate GSO in this game. Quite unfortunate. In a very bizarre change, I actually love GeoCorp the most in this game. I say it's so bizarre because in regular TerraTech, GeoCorp is garbage for the most part. They're only good for like their super powerful wheels, really massive blocks, and like batteries, the healing bubble, a couple of niche things like that. Otherwise though, they're completely worthless in my opinion. And melee in original TerraTech is garbage. But in here, Impact is so easy to build, it is stupid. You guys will see that a bit later on. You get so many of the impact, like 15% damage blocks, that you can get insane impact damage, and that's how my survival playthrough just got carried. It's so stupid. Hawkeye is the 3rd manufacturer in this game, which I didn't actually expect. I really thought there was going to be Venture in here, which is a huge disappointment in my opinion. I wanted Venture, they're like one of my favorites. They do have some references in here, but no actual Prospector or blocks. I'm hoping they will add Venture to a future update. I think like a crazy speed demon character that's not better future would be very nice. The Hawkeye guy is actually really awesome because just like in the original game, Hawkeye is all focused around insanely powerful weapons and, well, great damage in general, on top of really good survivability with armor. and the character's abilities, which I'll get to in a little bit. The last manufacturer, Better Future, I actually forgot they exist. Like, they're not new, they've been in TerraTech for a while. I'm just like, oh yeah, Better Future, the one I never use. Because most of Better Future stuff is garbage. I know I'm saying they're so bad, like Hawkeye and GSO and Venture, those are my favorite in base game TerraTech. But yeah, I don't really use much Better Future stuff, except for some of the controls, maybe, and their flight blocks can be very nice. And anti-gravity. Anti-gravity is really good on heavy techs. But the character skills are actually half decent. She just has the same problem as GSO with zero survivability. The only thing that helps is that the Better Future blocks in this game are all like drones and range stuff, so you can keep a tiny bit more distance from the enemy. The drones don't have great range though. Hawkeye actually has the rangefinder block as an accessory, and you can actually get multiple of them, which gives you way better range and thus more survivability. It's pretty awesome. One of the biggest core parts of this game is the boost mechanic. Just like in original TerraTech, you get a bit of a boost timer that can be upgraded with blocks. But in this game, everyone has a boost regardless of having thrusters or not, and each character's boost does something a bit different. GSO has a stun boost, which is sometimes useless because the enemies can still hit you before you get your stun off. I mean, it has some potential, but I don't like it. Corp has my second favorite boost because it gives you armor when you boost into enemies, which is good for survivability, of course. And with later skills of this guy, it can replenish your armor bars, which is another one of his stupidly powerful skills. I'll get to the other passives in a bit. Hawkeye is easily my favorite boost because it allows you to phase through enemies and attacks, making you practically invincible if you know how to time it right. It's insanely broken. Of course, you just can't get caught lacking or else you will get one shot. That's the slight problem with Hawkeye. And Better Future, well, Better Future is, as usual, garbage. The main problem with them is actually handling. If you've played TerraTech, you'll know that Better Future has like zero handling, and they embrace that in this game. You can literally not control your tech at all, except when boosting. And all her boost really does, well, I don't actually know, but when you get later on skill that unlocks the actual boost special, it creates a plasma trail behind you which damages enemies. Very neat concept, but rarely useful unless you have tons of elemental damage. Alright, back to like the passives of each character. GSO is all about, well, more scrap, more luck, and stuff like that. Each character has like speed, acceleration, and other maneuverability skills like that baked into their kit, as well as some boost stuff. But GSO is still mostly about scrap and luck, getting more rerolls, which again is really good if you know what you're doing, but lack of survivability, even though she gets like 5 regeneration, which doesn't proc at all by the way, it has to be like a 10 or 20 second timer between heals. The healing just doesn't like affect you at all. You don't feel it. It's really bad, trust me. But still very useful if you can play safe enough, I guess. Corp, like I said, is actually my favorite, which is wild to me, but he is just the best character, easily. So why is Corp so powerful? Well, his special ability revolves around those extra armor bars that you see. You can upgrade those to get insanely powerful with skills. So why are these shield bars so powerful? Each one is essentially another health segment, and they scale up to 50 health per bar. Now, that's insane on its own, having up to 250 extra health at max rank. But imagine this. Each of those shield bars is like a mini health gate. If you don't know what health gate is, essentially if you take too much damage or, go below a certain amount of health, it's in most video games, but it kind of gives you invincibility for a few frames. And the reason that's so stupid is because, okay, well, you don't get the invincibility frames, but you actually get another form of health gate, I guess you could say, where, say in late game survival, where enemies can one-shot you if you're not careful. They deal like hundreds of damage per attack. Now imagine if those 100 damage attacks, or let's say 500 damage, is gated by a single shield bar. Do you know how crazy that survivability is? The most insane part of it all is to regenerate these shield bars, you just have to wait a tiny bit of time or boost into enemies. So if you play your timing right, you can just live infinitely with this guy. It's ridiculous. On top of that, since like 99% of the enemies in this game do have to melee attack you, well, guess what? Impact, aka melee damage, is stupidly broken. I cannot stress how overpowered this is in this game, especially with how easy it is to get the impact damage blocks, which give, more damage, and they're really good building blocks on top of that. You can get insane melee DPS, especially with later on weapons, but my favorite part of it all is some clips from my actual best survival run. There's this one, Geocorp, I've got impact mine or whatever they call it. Essentially, it drops mines in whatever direction it's facing. That sounds pretty good, right? Guess what? It scales with impact damage. Think about that for a minute. Say you have 2 to 3, even more 100% impact damage with area effect mines. That's going to clear out enemies so insanely fast. I love Geocorp so much in this game. Although I will admit, as an original TerraTech player, it is beyond cursed to see a lot of the Geocorp blocks in this game. You've got stuff like high-tier mining lasers, but the building blocks, they have 1 blocks, like 1x1s. That's cursed. In original TerraTech, Geocorp doesn't have 1x1s. Their smallest building blocks are like 4x4. I think there's like a 1x2x4, like you can see in my inventory. That's also in here, but yeah, cursed stuff. On top of that, some of the melee weapons and blocks from TerraTech in general are changed in here. Like, for some reason, the plasma cutter is a 1 block instead of a 2x2. That's so bizarre, but sure, I guess. The Hawkeye guy's whole deal in this game, besides the insane phase boost that you get, is all about critical damage. Yes, believe it or not, there is a critical hit system, but it's 1% for all weapons for every character except Hawkeye. I don't know what his bonus is. It has to be 25 to 50%, because most of your attacks will be critical, dealing insane damage. On top of that, when you phase through enemies, it makes your next attack on them guaranteed to be a critical, allowing you to do massive amounts of damage. Even better, his primary weapons are precision. That's another type of damage. There's impact, explosive, ballistic, precision, energy, and elemental. But the fun thing about precision is that most of their weapons actually pierce through enemies. This is especially fun when you get the high tier railguns and, piercing weapons that can just shoot through so many enemies at once. And the legendary one actually applies that critical effect to enemies if it doesn't kill them. Very awesome overall. On top of Hawkeye having the best armor box and actually wheels. Their wheels give really good speed and grip, which is very nice for handling. Geocorp also has great handling wheels, but they generally reduce speed and acceleration. Better features Prospector. She's, of course, a glass cannon, like I've already said. Her drones definitely make up for it, with drones having ridiculous DPS potential. Oddly enough, the melee drones are some of the best because they stay out for so long, and drone duration can be extended with certain blocks, as well as drone damage, and then further increased by whatever damage type of those drones are. Mostly energy for the ones that shoot, impact for the melees, you get the point. Besides that, her kit isn't really good, I have to admit, and better future handling, like I said, you can't control, it really freaking sucks. The only way I found to play Better Future is to just get wheels on her as soon as physically possible, because you cannot control anything with those stupid hover pads. And her skills aren't even that great. It's mostly just drone uptime before they have to recharge, and eventually you can get a skill where they explode so that they come back immediately, which is very nice. I do really like her impact damage skill because that makes your melee drones stupidly powerful, but I'm not a huge fan of Better Future. I never have been. Alright, this is footage from my current best survival playthrough. I could have easily gone on way longer, but this playthrough was an hour and a half, which is ridiculous for a single game. And it was not even close to what I could potentially do now that I'm so much better at the game and truly understand how powerful using rerolls to actually banish, aka get rid of certain drops. And that's essentially how you really should be playing the game. I wouldn't waste rerolls on like accessories, but definitely use your rerolls on useless weapons that you don't want. That's kind of the strategy I've developed. Once you get enough XP, a drop comes down and you can rebuild your tech or upgrade it however you want, on top of getting like care packages occasionally from drones that spawn. And that's essentially how I play at this point. I just use all of my rerolls to get rid of all of the junk weapons that I don't want. If I don't have enough rerolls, I'll try to get some high tier item and then recycle that to get more rerolls. It's actually a really good system now that I truly understand it. Alright, besides all of those things, there's plenty more to explain about this game. You might have noticed there are different planets. Each planet has different difficulties, and in those difficulties, there's actually challenges for you to complete. Most of them are easy, I will say that. However, some challenges are an absolute pain to deal with. Like, most of them aren't bad by any means, but there's a few I wish weren't in the game at all. The best example is the corrupted block. The corrupted block is a brand new mechanic to this game, actually one of my favorites. Essentially, somewhere on each map, I'm not even joking, these maps are absolutely massive, by the way, there is a single randomly generated corrupt block. So yeah, it's gonna be in a different spot every time you try to find it. It's horrible. Essentially, there are two challenges requiring you to get this corrupt block. The first one only requires one corrupt block, which is almost impossible to get on its own, considering you have a limited time in each playthrough, as you can see by the timer on the top. That's the other big challenge of getting the corrupted block, is getting it in time and surviving. You have to balance your like survival, moving around the map, and killing enemies to get decent enough gear. It's really dumb. But the corrupt block is awesome. I don't know how many variants there are. It might be like 10 or something like that. But essentially, when you place these things on your tech, it'll give you some crazy buffs for crazy debuffs at the same time, and it'll be locked on your tech, and usually lock other blocks. So the buffs range from everything to like more energy damage and less explosive. You know, there's stuff like that for all the damage types. One of my favorites actually makes your booster insanely powerful, but it locks your booster, so you have to use the full duration and it keeps you in the same direction. So it's a bit tricky to deal with, but very fun in my opinion. There's another fascinating one that gives you really powerful regeneration. However, if you don't kill any enemies within a certain period, you start losing life very fast. It actually killed 2 of my runs during boss fights, because in some boss fights, like, they won't spawn enemies until they reach half health. And yeah, I kind of bled out during those fights. It really sucks, but it's still fun to use. There's also like a ram that you put, well, the first time I used it, I didn't realize what it was. I put it on the back of my tech. That can still work, but it's best to put it on the front of your tech, and it does like infinite ramming damage, which is impact. Obviously, you can see how powerful that gets. So the corrupt block is fascinating. I love the mechanic. I just wish it wasn't a challenge to actually find it. Now imagine this, if finding the corrupt block is like finding a needle in a haystack, or in this game, a piece of hay in a needle stack because it's so terrible to do, imagine having to do that twice in a single playthrough without dying, because that is the hardest challenge of the game. The third difficulty of the magma planet requires that as the final challenge. Believe it or not, I actually managed to do it. I've tried to redo it several times, but of course, when I'm not recording, I always get the best runs. Still, I would not wish that challenge on anyone because it's just horrible to do. There were all sorts of other terrible ones, like healing 10,000 damage. How are you supposed to do that? Well, Hawkeye's the only way you can actually viably do it, I think, because Sam's other skill, that's the guy's name, allows you to heal whenever you kill an enemy with a critical hit. And considering you get like tens of thousands of small one-shot enemies, it's possible to do, but takes a very long time and some careful maneuvering, besides the fact you have to get hit all the time. So it's certainly an interesting challenge, but yeah, they all suck. On top of that, all of these challenges that you have to do in normal runs, by the way, they are on a timer. So you'll have to deal with the mini boss, and for some of them where you have to beat the entire run, the final boss, and you have to do all these challenges within however many minutes. It's very stressful and difficult. I haven't even mentioned the fact that there are also contracts, which are another type of challenge, but thankfully you can do these on any mode, including survival. But you'll do most of them in normal runs because, well, that's just how it'll work. There's all sorts of things from like dealing damage with specific blocks, getting specific kills with damage types or things like that. None of them are particularly difficult. The most annoying has certainly been 20,000 stun kills because there aren't many things that stun. You have the GSO skill, and there's a special power-up you can get from certain containers, but that's all easiest to do in survival. Especially because in normal runs, most of the containers you'll find, those like triangle-looking things on your map, well, those actually give commander experience or prospector experience, whatever, most of the time. In here, a lot of them are actually healing, but you will get a lot of very nice power-ups. Everything from like range to area of effect, more damage for a tiny bit, speed, insane boost upgrade for a tiny bit, which is very fun. And my favorite is definitely the stun, especially with certain builds, which you'll see pretty soon. If you get like one of the zapper weapons that can like chain to multiple enemies, you just get so many stunned at once. It's so fun. Of course, I've been saying like all of these things suck and they're a nightmare for the longest time at this point, but I have 50 hours in this game for a reason. It is so much freaking fun. Besides being able to see like what builds you can make for your tech and getting really awesome rolls occasionally, I enjoy the boss fights and general enemy killing of this game. I mean, sure, you can't see what's going on half the time, but that's kind of the fun of it. Believe it or not, there's actually a lot of mechanical skill involved in this, like weaving around projectiles, especially with later on bosses that have very specific attacks you have to dodge. It's quite awesome, I have to say. But my favorite part of the game is probably like the station encounters, whatever these point of interests are. Essentially, these things have a little pad that you stand on. There is one that just has a boss pre-spawned there. It's a little bit annoying, but sure. Essentially, these will spawn a random encounter from a specific boss, or just like hordes of enemies. You either have to kill these enemies, or for some Geocorp ones, they actually just explode. So you damage them a tiny bit, one explodes, and it sets off a massive chain reaction. Obviously, the goal is to survive them. But there are like really late game high tier exploding enemies that can one-shot you if they get too close. And they have a massive damage radius, naturally. Still all very fun. I actually love this game so much. And the only real complaint I have about this game is the map. I really wish there was a full screen world map that you could see, because it is quite confusing to traverse the level sometimes. But that's it. The craziest part of this game, which I was quite worried about when I started playing it, was actually performance. Now, I've locked my frames to 60, and my graphics are almost the highest, I think, and it runs perfectly smooth on my computer. I don't have the craziest high-tier setup, but it is still very good. It's a 4070 Super, I believe, and then a very high-tier AMD CPU. I honestly don't know my AMD CPUs, that's just what I have, but it's a good one. I have a very powerful computer is all I'm saying, and it runs perfectly fine. Even with all of the projectiles and insane stuff that's going around every second on your screen, I've had zero performance issues, zero bugs, zero lag or crashes. I can't believe it. At the same time, I almost can. TerraTech in general, now I haven't played Worlds much. I know Worlds is a far more graphics intensive game, but the original TerraTech game is only like 800 megabytes, which take that into mind for a second. 800 megabytes. Sure, it was made over 10 years ago, but still, that is a stupidly small game for how big the world is. It's ridiculous. And on that note, I've never had major performance issues or bugs with TerraTech. So that just goes to show how well optimized these games are by Payload Studios. Now, TerraTech Worlds, again, I'll say I haven't played that much of it, especially recently, but I know that had, at least for me, performance issues when I played it, but that was on my old computer, which wasn't nearly as good. It was still really powerful, but I guess I was playing on max settings. It's hard to say. To wrap the video up, and I apologize for how low the quality is going to get, YouTube's just going to kill the bitrate compression on this thing. Like, I can't see anything going on already, and that's in editing, which is saying a lot. It's going to look horrible for you guys, so sorry about that. But the final boss that I managed to find and defeat was actually the Dark Eye. Now, it cycles through all the bosses, but the Dark Eye does not spawn in any other mode besides late game survival. So that's very neat. But you, okay, can't really tell what my build is. This is the insane impact build I've been talking about. I have the tremor presses, which deal damage in an area around you. Obviously, they scale with impact, which is dumb. I've got all of those mine layers that I love. I've got the flail and some swords in the front of my tech. On top of that, I've got my favorite galvanic laser or whatever it's called at the top. It does insane amounts of energy damage, and it chains to multiple targets. I like it a lot, and it's quite fun if you get a max energy build. On top of some other random explosive guns, it's pretty awesome. You can also see a couple of my favorite blocks. There is the 4 Horsemen railgun up in the middle. I love that thing. It literally carries 4 railguns, and it has 360 degrees of vision, which is quite ridiculous. It shreds through enemies. It's also weird because it's actually counted as ballistic, so it scales with ballistic, not precision damage. I guess it makes sense. There is a precision railgun already. That's the critical damage one. On top of that, this game has one of my favorite blocks from TerraTech, known as the SCU. It basically gives your tech way better pickup range, so it's easier to pick up scrap, as that's one of the biggest weaknesses of Geocorp especially, but definitely Hawkeye too. That is the only good thing I'll say about Better Future and sometimes GSO. They have way better scrap pickup ranges, and Better Future, her drones automatically pick up scrap when they kill enemies, which is very nice. But this is just madness. You can't see anything at all. I absolutely love it. Well, the thing I really love is just being able to face tank every single attack that gets thrown at me. It's ridiculous. Oh yeah, and one thing I haven't really mentioned yet is that every single block has a description, naturally, and they have kept the humor from TerraTech in this game. It's pretty awesome. There's some really funny ones in there. I like how they call the SCU just a glorified cabinet. That's awesome. And I'll be honest, it makes me want to go play TerraTech and TerraTech Worlds. I think I'm going to be doing that. Well, as a matter of fact, I did re-download both of them recently, and I loaded up TerraTech. I'm glad that Steam Cloud actually saves everything, because I was looking and it has all of my old tech saves. I was just able to fly around in R&D with my single favorite plane I've ever made. Such a great game. Maybe I'll make a video on the other TerraTech games at some point. Who knows? I kind of doubt that this video will do well, but you never know. All I know is that I'm having a ton of fun, and I absolutely love this game. I'm also going to be watching how it does because, it's only a month and a half old of a game. And I think it's early access or beta, something like that, so I can't wait to see what they come up with. Absolute 15 out of 10 game. I love it so much. I heavily recommend it. But thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it, as always. And a special thank you to all of my channel members and supporters. This is going to be Enzo from Lookintogaming, signing out.